Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. We are going to debate a proposition today that you have heard a ton about. I can't escape it because the ads are on every commercial break. Proposition 127. You will decide, voters will in November, whether Arizona's Constitution should require electric companies to get half of their electricity from renewable resources such as solar and wind. And to talk about it, two folks that I've known a pretty long time. On the left of your screen, Matt Benson. He is against 127, former reporter for the Arizona Republic, spokesman for Governor Jan Brewer. Kris, 127, she's for it. She's a former Arizona Corporation Commissioner, a former reporter for the Arizona Republic. These are two bright folks, and we've promised to be respectful because you could not be more divided over what this proposition means. Kris, I'm going to give you the floor first. Why should people vote for 127?
Well, Prop 127 will take our current renewable energy usage by our utilities from the current 15% to 50% by the year 2030. And
2030.
Yeah, and the reasons are very clear. Prop 127 and going to 50% renewables will actually decrease energy costs in Arizona by $4.1 billion with a B. And that's because renewable energy is now the least cost resource available to our utilities. So solar and wind and biomass and biogas and landfill gas, all of those renewable sources are actually the cheapest form of energy that our utilities could go out and buy. Unfortunately, APS, which is the company that Matt represents, has decided that they actually want to go out and instead of doing renewables, they want to build 5,500 megawatts of new natural gas plants. Now, that's going to cost more than $4 billion more than doing renewable energy will cost. In addition, the plan that APS just put forward to the Corporation Commission to build 5,500 megawatts of natural gas will waste water, will pollute our air, and will not help us grow jobs. Prop 127, for instance, will increase the number of jobs that our state has by more than 16,000. And by the way, John, those are good-paying jobs. Our state needs to be competitive with our surrounding states.
Okay, Matt, same question. Why should people vote against 127?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, John. Look, it comes down to this. What the Prop 127 campaign is selling is as old as politics itself, and that's the idea of something for nothing. And if you're an Arizona voter sitting at home, you know what that means. When someone offers you something for nothing, you better hang on to your wallet because they're coming after it. Prop 127 is going to increase the cost that you pay every month when you get your utility bill. And the reason is pretty simple. It's going to create billions of dollars in additional expenses. Think about the ballot language. It says the mandates take effect irrespective of cost to consumers. That means your utilities are going up. So if Prop 127 passes, you're going to pay more for electricity every month, and that's going to hurt those Arizonans who can least afford it. Seniors, low-income families, and small businesses. And that is the reason that we have a massive coalition across this state that has come out against Prop 127.
Well, actually, John, if I could just say, the massive coalition is in favor of Prop 127. In fact, 70 to 75%. Could you be respectful? I mean, I don't know what you're doing.
Go ahead. No, continue.
The 70 to 75% of Arizonans believe we ought to be doing more renewable energy, not less. And so when you actually look at the support for renewables and the fact that most of Arizonans believe that we ought to be moving in this direction, most Arizonans wake up every morning and see that we have Beijing-style air here in Phoenix and sometimes in Tucson, and they want to do something about it. And with regard to the cost is going to come clearly from the plan that APS has put forward to build 5,500 megawatts of new natural gas, which, by the way, John, that translates to somewhere between 10 and 15 new fossil fuel plants. Now, where are you guys planning on putting all those 15 new fossil fuel plants? I mean, which neighborhoods are we going to put those plants in?
Okay, hang on. I'd like to talk about the support.
We'd love to know where they're going to go.
I'd like to know what you think about the 34% support for Prop 127, according to the brand new poll by the Arizona Republic out this week.
I think when you...
Arizona voters, if I can finish, since I let you finish, Arizona voters, as they learn more about this initiative, your numbers are collapsing. You know it. I know it. It's the reason that your campaign is lashing out at groups who've come out against you, at the Attorney General of this state. It's desperate, it's sad, but that's where we are in this campaign because voters have abandoned you.
I want to talk less about the campaign and more about what voters are trying to figure out, because I'm telling you, people on the face of it, you're right. They say, well, solar, we've got plenty of sun, why aren't we using it? Matt, is APS committed to doing more with solar down the line? Now that you were on the commission when the Corporation Commission said you've got to have 15% by what,
2025.
2025. And we're there right now. Here we go. We've got a big solar array here. But there's a cost to this, right?
Well, let's have a reality check real quick in terms of clean energy, because this is not a question of whether you support clean energy. Everybody supports clean energy. Arizona is third in the nation when it comes to solar capacity. So we are already a national leader in solar. APS, who Kris and the campaign like to talk about a lot, has 1 million solar panels on the system. They're one of the nation's leaders in renewable energy.
John,
and we're going to continue. Just let me finish.
Is it cost effective?
No, I have to.
What is cost effective?
No, absolutely have to correct this lie.
What is cost effective is having an Arizona plan.
Let him finish and you can correct it.
This is ridiculous.
Having an Arizona plan that takes into account Arizona needs, that balances the needs of families, small businesses, and the environment.
You're saying it's going to cost too much to do this?
This plan is going to add, on average, $1,000 a year to utility bills.
How do you know? How do you know?
That's the estimate. That takes into account the economists at ASU who came out. And it's not just that. APS, Tucson Electric, Unisource Electric, the state of Arizona via the Residential Utility Consumer Office, they all say rates will go up.
That's a lie.
Hold on, Kris.
So that's a lie.
Which part is a lie?
First of all, the study that he's citing is a study that was done using inputs that APS provided. It's never been made transparent, and no other study says that. In fact, the study that was done by ICF, which is an international firm, shows that actually Prop 127 will save Arizona ratepayers $4.1 billion.
Over how much time?
Over the period by 2030. So, John, with regard to what Matt just said about the renewables that APS is doing, you know, I can remember being a corporation commissioner when we first started writing the original renewable energy standard. And you know what APS said? They said the same thing they're saying today. Oh, we can't do this, commissioners. Arizonans will never adopt solar. It'll be too expensive. It's technically unfeasible. It's impossible to get done. Well, guess what? They did it. They did it 10 years ahead of time, and they did it in a cost-effective manner. Now they don't want to go any further because their profits will suffer if we actually move in this direction.
Let me ask you this. Okay,
and so that's what you're really seeing. The fact that, you know, APS is spending tens of millions of dollars, John. Think about that. I think they're going to spend upwards of $50 million to fight the will of their own ratepayers.
Why are they spending that kind of money? Why?
This is going to hurt Arizona families. This is going to hurt consumers. It's going to hurt ratepayers.
Hurt the utility?
It's going to hurt the economy. Look, the utilities will be fine. The utilities will be fine.
That's ridiculous.
You know as well as I do, the utilities will be fine. They will push those costs onto ratepayers. And they're the ones who are going to...
They definitely want to push costs on ratepayers.
Let me pull up the language of the prop, because I think it's instructive to go over the language of the proposition. Let's take it full screen, and I hope you guys can see it when we pull it up full screen. Okay, this is it. This is what you'll be looking at. And there is something in here that is curious. Matt mentioned it, a yes vote, renewable energy with a constitutional mandate, irrespective of cost to consumers. Why is that language?
That language was inserted by the Attorney General in a manner that was completely inappropriate and unprecedented and dangerous, and probably spurred on by APS.
You have no idea what you're talking about, and you're making a charge that is completely unsubstantiated.
Hold on, let Kris, go ahead.
Could you be respectful, Matt? I mean, first of all, that language was inserted by the Attorney General. It was completely inappropriate. It's never been done before. And it was done probably to tank this proposition and to scare people into voting against it.
And Matt, your take on that language?
I mean, that language is not in the actual proposition.
Notice what she did not say about that language. What she did not say is that it is false. And that's because that
false.
language is
It's
completely...
a lie. It's a complete lie. It is absolutely untrue.
Hang on,
Not
guys.
if you're going to lie to the people of Arizona,
The
Matt.
mandates in Prop 127 take effect no matter what. No matter how much your rates go up or down,
That's also
no
not
matter
true.
the impact on the economy.
John, can we put the language back up?
Yeah, let's put it up.
Let's scroll the language.
Hold on.
Let's put the language back
Let's
up
put the
because I
language
helped
back up.
write
We
it. You're
will.
absolutely wrong.
There is no rate cap in Prop 127.
I don't know how voters are going to figure this out, guys. This is complicated.
Let's look at the language. At the end of the language, there's a provision that says...
Take it full, if you will.
There's a provision that says the Arizona Corporation Commission must engage in a rulemaking process to implement the 50%, which means that the commissioners at the end of the day have a say over how this gets implemented. We put that in. I made sure that it was put in because I wrote the original renewable energy standard. And what that means is if for some reason the cost of renewable energy goes up, which by the way, John, it's not going to. It's only going down because the markets are pushing it further and further down. So if I'm totally wrong, if all of the other utilities in the western half of the United States
could
are
roll it back?
it can be
Do you believe that?
changed.
No, that's
Why?
ridiculous.
It's in the language, Matt.
Look,
I mean, I don't know what's ridiculous
about it. You're putting it into the Arizona Constitution. You are handcuffing the Arizona Corporation Commission. Everything about this process that they're doing is to take the power away from our statewide elected officials at the Corporation Commission. And now she
You
wants,
were one of them.
And now she wants to say, oh, but we're going to give them the authority to undo it. That's completely ridiculous.
Well, so what is completely ridiculous is the fact that APS has spent the last 8 years spending dark money to get its hand-picked regulators elected. You see them right here on the board. Most of the people serving on the commission were basically elected with APS money. So one of the reasons we have to do Prop 127, and one of the reasons the people of Arizona really have to take this into their own hands is because we just don't have trust in the commission anymore.
Why not disband the commission?
Well, and I would add to that, the fact that the commission has done nothing since basically I left the commission in 2010 to advance renewable energy.
Let me ask you, so that's why, this is why you want to put it in constitutional language that can't be tinkered with.
I wish that APS had not spent the last 8 years basically hand selecting its own regulators. I wish we could go back and unwind the clock to the point where people could have trust in the commission again. I wish the commission would take a leadership role. I wish APS would not have just put forward a plan to build 5,500 megawatts of new natural gas plants.
We got to go to a break. Let me give you the final word.
If we could have a reality check here. Arizona is third in the nation in solar. We already have an energy mix that is 50% clean in the state when you include nuclear. We are among the state's leaders in clean energy, despite what you hear from the Prop 127 side.
Why is nuclear not considered clean?
Nuclear is clean, it is just not renewable, and it was never renewable under the renewable energy standard that we wrote back in 2006. No state that I know of that includes nuclear in its renewable portfolio standard. It's absurd.
Well, California's new standard includes nuclear.
It's not California's new standard is not a renewable portfolio standard. Its current renewable portfolio standard, Matt,
okay, when we come back, we're
going
to talk about, because we are going through this in some western states, California and Colorado come to mind. Is there anything we've learned from those states that's instructive as people vote on 127? Prop 127, we're debating it. You'll decide on it. Should Arizona's Constitution require that half of our power, electricity, come from renewable resources? How much will it cost you? Back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. All right, back on Newsmaker Saturday. The break was even spirited. We are talking about Prop 127. You've been seeing the ads from both sides on whether going renewable in Arizona, 50%, it would be codified into the Arizona Constitution. It would change the language of the Arizona Constitution requiring that electric companies, we're talking about here in the Valley APS, in Tucson, Tucson Electric Power, and then all the rural power companies, they would have to get half of their electricity from renewable sources such as solar and wind. Okay, Kris, you favor it. How do we know that this isn't going? The big issue is kind of, are you willing to go this route if your rates climb? That's been the argument on the other side.
Rates are not going to climb.
You're sure of this?
I am 100% sure of this. In fact, when you compare, again, what APS wants to do, which is to build 10 to 15 new expensive natural gas plants, which pollute the air, which emit carbon and NOx and SOx and sulfur. When you compare that plan, which, by the way, they just put forward, so that's the plan for Arizona
is more natural
by APS,
gas.
Is more natural gas. That's more expensive than doing renewable energy. So there have been several utility RFPs where the utilities have said, hey, energy developers, bring in all of your proposals. Bring us all your proposals. They just did it in Colorado, and TEP down in Tucson just did one. Guess what happened? The cheapest bids were from solar energy projects, and they were even solar plus storage. So the sources of energy that are coming in, that are being bid into these utility processes are renewables. And if that's the case, how in the world can we afford APS's risky and expensive plan to build no new renewable energy? I mean, can you fathom that, John?
Well, let's have Matt respond. Why the reliance on natural gas?
Well, first off, natural gas is the reason that the United States is cutting its carbon emissions faster than any other country on Earth, okay? So she wants to call it dirty natural gas, but natural gas has been a huge part of the reason that energy prices are affordable in this country and that carbon emissions are coming down.
But why would you do 100% natural gas? Who would do 100%
all of this, though, is on the back of...
Please, that's in the plan. Would you like me to show it to you?
All of this is on the backdrop of ratepayers right now saying, why do my rates keep going up?
That's because APS keeps increasing people's rates
through
its investments.
The largest clean energy source in this country is Palo Verde Generating Station. We have it right here outside the Phoenix metro area, and Prop 127 endangers that plant.
Oh, that's ridiculous. That's an outright lie by APS. John, this is the most ridiculous thing that they've said yet.
If I could finish.
It's not going anywhere.
Okay, hang on.
You wrote the initiative. You could have included nuclear as a clean energy source. You intentionally did not.
Why would
and there's
you?
A reason
there's nothing that's going to, John, again, this is one of the silliest and most ridiculous things that APS has put forward yet in fighting renewable energy is this notion that it's going to endanger Palo Verde. John, Palo Verde has something like a half a dozen different utility owners, including several in Arizona, one in New Mexico, and multiple in California. Those owners aren't going to want to get rid of Palo Verde. It's a good 24/7 baseload resource. It also only represents something like 28% of Arizona's overall energy portfolio. This standard is 50%. You do the math. If there's anything that's going to be shut down, it could be coal plants, but coal plants are being shut down all over the West.
What we've heard, though, is that when you start going to solar, while it sounds good, it's expensive. And so
it's really not. No, this is what I'm telling you. Today, the cost, it was a little bit more expensive back in the 2000s when we originally adopted the renewable energy standard. But the wonderful thing that's happened in the last decade, John, is what we'd hoped would happen when I was on the Corporation Commission, is that so many people have adopted solar and we have so much solar in the system.
But aren't the other ratepayers subsidizing this?
Not anymore.
Oh,
solar is actually, no, they're not.
John, if I could get a word
no, wait a second.
Hold on, I got to give Matt a shot here.
It is the least cost resource, John, and that is the wonderful thing that's happened in the last decade.
Okay, let Matt respond. Go ahead.
First off, she is not taking into account the billions of dollars in cost to decommission existing plants and to build all of the new facilities for the solar farms, the transmission lines, the battery storage. It's a fairy tale. The idea that Prop 127 is going to save you money, if you're sitting at home and you think
this is absurd.
And you think that the utility,
this is absurd.
Kris,
do we know? Do we have data to prove this one way or the other? Okay, let me ask your data and then I'll ask you data.
No, let's talk about Colorado. Let's talk about Colorado, where 57% of the energy is going to come from renewable energy.
We'll talk about Colorado.
We are fortunate in that we have an example of a state with this exact same 50% renewable standard. And it's California, Kris.
Energy bills overall.
Hold on, let him finish. Go ahead.
This is absurd.
Since California
This is
enacted
absurd.
Okay, it
their
may be,
renewable
but
standard-
I'll give you a shot, Kris.
Okay.
Hang on. Let Matt finish.
Since California enacted its renewable standard of 50% in 2015, their electricity rates are increasing at 3 times the national average. 3 times. And there's a reason for that. All of those billions of dollars in expenses get passed along to consumers, and everybody sitting at home knows that
They're
those
not
costs
happy
are
with
gonna
this
get-
in California?
Well, first
It's
of all,
creating
this is
an economic crisis in that state.
this is again APS.
Rebut, Counselor.
This is APS trying to. This is again APS trying to pull the wool over Arizonans' eyes, and it's really offensive. And Arizonans are really. I guess they think Arizonans are stupid. APS thinks Arizonans are stupid, and they're really not. So. First of all, this is not true. Overall energy bills, when you look at bills,
In California, we're
California,
talking.
yeah, I mean, energy bills are lower.
How about the
because
price of electricity?
And overall prices of electricity are affected by a lot of things, like the cost of land. When a utility has to build a power plant, they have to buy the land. Well, guess what? The cost of land, the cost of permitting, the cost of everything in California is higher than it is
So
in
you're
Arizona.
saying it's not the actual power,
apples
but
and
that is
oranges.
part of
It's
the equation, though,
ridiculous.
right?
just a
You got to pay
coincidence.
for it.
It's a huge coincidence, John.
It's a silly comparison.
Okay, we got to
John.
take a quick break. We're going to give you both a final thought, gather your thoughts, the final pitch for and against Prop 127. It's going to be on the ballot. It's one of the most hotly contested props out there, and it would change language in the Arizona Constitution. Back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Okay, back with a couple of folks I have a lot of respect for. Kris Mayes supports strongly, she's a former corporation commissioner, strongly supports 127, which you will be deciding on. It would require electric companies to get half of their electricity from renewable sources such as solar and wind. Matt Benson, these are both former reporters of the Arizona Republic. Matt Benson is strongly against 127. I'm trying to remember who I started with Kris. I'll give you the final word, Matt. Kris, give me your best case why people should vote for 127.
So folks in Arizona should vote for Prop 127, and I'll be voting for Prop 127 because it will reduce energy bills and ratepayers' bills by $4.1 billion. It will reduce carbon emissions by 4.6 million tons annually. It will save Arizona probably tens of billions of gallons of water, which we desperately need in a state that's being affected by drought. It will create 16,000 good-paying jobs. It will increase our economy by $2.2 billion. And so the benefits associated with going to renewables are tremendous. And I would just end with this. You know, this is about what kind of an energy future and economic destiny we want to have as a state. Do we want to be the state where APS gets to dictate to us that we're going to be the dumping ground of new natural gas plants in the West? Do we want to be the state that gets left behind by all of our surrounding states that go to 50 or 100% renewables? Or do we want to be the state that captures the sunlight, that captures our most magnificent natural resource, which is solar energy, and we harness that and we create a better future for our people?
You get the last word, Matt. We started with Kris. You'll get the last word. Why should people vote against?
Prop 127 comes down to your pocketbook. It's going to cost you more every time you get that utility bill. $1,000 more over the course of a year for the typical Arizona family. That is the estimate across every major utility in the state that has come out against this initiative. A coalition of 300 elected officials, more than 100 community groups have looked at Prop 127. They have weighed the merits. They support clean energy, but they know that Prop 127 is going to raise utility bills, kill jobs, and hurt Arizona families, seniors, and small businesses. And that's the reason that Arizona voters en masse are turning against Prop 127.
Okay, Matt Benson, Kris Mayes, I appreciate you both being on here, and it's a tough issue, I know. Go do your homework, and we'll do the same. Thank you for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. Kris, Matt, great to see you both, and good luck in the campaign coming up in a few weeks. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.